Hello and welcome. This is Chala Dincoy, CEO and founder of the Repositioning Expert, live here with you for another podcast interview for Naked Marketing, where we get honest and naked with our marketing mistakes. My guest is Steve Benson. Welcome, Steve.
Thanks for having me today. Really excited to be here.
Yeah, so tell us what Badger Maps is. Tell us who you help, what you do.
Sure. So, what Badger Maps is it's an application for field salespeople. And what we do is we help field salespeople build routes, figure out their schedule, help them figure out who to focus on when they're in the field, which are their most important customers, given the constraints that they face. A lot of the constraints being where they are in the map in nature. So we do a bunch of things for outside and field salespeople, basically to make them more efficient, have them drive less, so less windshield time, less zigzagging around town, being more efficient with their time, and just overall being more successful.
That's certainly a soundbite, less windshield time. So tell me, like, how did you get into this, Steve? Were you one of these windshield people?
Yeah, my whole career is in field sales, and then my last gig as an employee was at Google, and I left Google about 10 years ago to start this company. And so I was at Google, and I was working with their mapping stuff and their mobile stuff, so the Android stuff. And so I knew the problems that field salespeople have really well, and basically the technology that was coming out for mobile. And if 10 years ago is a long time, right? The iPhone was still in its infancy, the Android was in its infancy as well. And but I could see kind of where the puck was going, and I was able to skate to the where the puck was going rather than where it was. And basically was able to figure out, well, here's a set of problems that this group of people, field salespeople, have, and they're gonna be solvable with this mapping technology and this cloud-based computing technology and this mobile technology over the next 5 years, as that kind of speeds up and gets better and better. And sure enough, within a few years, so we were able to start on the early problems, the basic stuff, or like and solve those early on. The technology was ready for that, and that was putting a field salesperson's territory on a map, allowing them to colorize the pins on the maps. They could see which customers had which characteristic, and then the routing came a little later, and the scheduling came a little later. Bringing in other sources of data like for new leads and that sort of thing, connecting to CRMs, that all came later. But even those early technology days, we were able to solve some of their key problems.
My God, what was it like to work at Google?
It was a lot of fun. They are an excellent organization. They obviously have a very special position in the market, kind of acting as guardian of the entrance to the internet. It's a useful place for them to be. And they are able to take some of those gains that they get from being in that position, and they put it towards making a really great place to work. So from an HR perspective, they've really been a transformational company, and it was cool to be there early on in that journey and kind of see them grow and be able to be a part of it.
Isn't there like a movie like about like the interns?
Yeah. I saw that. I mean, it was more of a comedy, but it was, Owen Wilson, I think, was in it, or his brother, I
Yeah.
forget.
And Vince,
But yeah, Vince Vaughn. It was pretty. I thought it was a lot of it was accurate. Some of it was not accurate. They don't actually play Quidditch, to my knowledge. At least when I was there, they didn't play Quidditch. But
I love
um,
that. So as soon as you said that, I was like, oh my God, he was that movie.
yeah. Yeah, so yeah, it was a lot of fun to work there, and I definitely I learned a ton. And it was great to be in a small team there. I was on the enterprise team, so that the basically we were selling the stuff that they sell to, selling their software products that they make for businesses.
So were you literally like in your car and going from door to door?
Less door to door. It's more of a B2B sale in general. So like And that's actually the problems that Badger solves too. It's mostly for people that are in business to business sales, and that's what I was doing. So, we were selling products to companies that then sell products rather than selling to consumers kind of door to door. But you know Badger's customers are med device companies, pharmaceutical companies, construction firms, the types of businesses that send people out into the field to meet with their customers face to face. And a lot of times those meetings are drop-ins, and a lot of times they are more scheduled, and different people have different blends of that. Some people have like a highly scheduled, certainly I did when I was at Google. Like when I was meeting with some technology executive or something, there was, you're on their calendar, you're meeting them at this specific time in this specific place. And that's how a lot of our customers meetings go to. Although some do just have, oh, well, I kind of know this prospect or customer. I'm going to swing by their place and see how things are going.
Yeah, I bet it was a totally different ball game to call up a customer and say, I'm calling from Google versus, hey, I'm Steve from Badger Maps. What a,
Absolutely, yeah.
right?
Well, especially when nobody knew what Badger Maps was. Now, I mean, maybe I shouldn't say most. A good percentage of field salespeople and outside salespeople have heard of us, but and so we have that mini brand awareness going. But it's really, I mean, yes, at Google, it was so helpful to have that brand to throw around. And before I was at Google, I was at a company called Autonomy, which got bought by HP. And Autonomy wasn't really a known brand, but it was still a big public company. I mean, probably had 1,000 employees or something. And before that, I was at IBM, which obviously everybody's heard of. And so that was, but Google definitely had the best brand out of all those. It's one of the best brands in the world, supposedly, in terms of people loving it and appreciating it.
I totally lived your life when, I used to say, I'm calling from Pepsi. And I actually did that kind of door to door kind of sales at Pepsi. And then I had my own company. It was not at all the same when you say you're calling from Chala Dincoy, the repositioning expert.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think the world has gotten noisier too. I think there's a lot of noise creating marketing that has been created, and it's and so it's a tougher time to just like call up or email or it's harder to go after people specifically and actually make things happen because they're overwhelmed. I mean, I was going through my LinkedIn last night, and it's just, it's literally taken me the entire lockdown of COVID to get through all my years of LinkedIn messages, and some of them were valuable, but most of them are garbage, right? And there's no easy way to sift through that other than kind of one at a time. And I think there's a lot of these places now where the world's become very noisy. Like people didn't used to get the amount of spam or that they used to get. They didn't used to get the number of phone calls they used to get, et cetera.
Yeah, for sure. Now, you are obviously a multi-million dollar company, big success. Tell us, like, what marketing mistake did you make?
Well, yeah, I'd say that our biggest mistake was just an over-reliance on passive marketing. Um, and by passive, I mean like SEO, advertising, the blogging and just kind of the things that you do the nets that you set up to catch people as they are already looking for you. Early on, when no one would have been looking for this anyway, I think we were doing more like direct reach outs. Like we were just, finding the right person on LinkedIn and with the right title in the right industry, like, oh, you're in sales operations, or you're a manager of a sales team or a VP of sales at a medical device company. Nice to meet you. Have you heard of this? Do you have this problem? Because we're solving it. Or would you like to hear about how? That worked really well early on, but it didn't. It's expensive to scale, and then I think we really shifted our focus towards more passive marketing, and I think we probably should have been investing in that direct marketing this whole time,
Ah,
much more.
that's so good. And you know what? A lot of my clients, they're afraid to do active marketing, or it's expensive to do active marketing, or they hate
Yeah,
it, or they just don't want to do it, and so
sure.
if they would so much rather do passive, because as it says, it's passive, right? You just sit back and let other people do it, or some people even let other people write their marketing, right? They would much rather serve the customer. But yeah, it's it's sad, isn't it, that you have to actually go in and do the active marketing.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think, to I guess there's a few things there to think about. First, there's I just don't like doing active marketing. I don't like throwing spears. I'd rather weave a web and catch some fish. Um, so that, people that just hate it, or maybe I would also include in hating it the I don't know how to do it types,
Ah,
right? Like I don't know how to
exactly.
figure out who to email or in mail, or who to call on the phone. How do I get their phone number? Like the blocking and tackling. So I guess that's kind of one bucket. The I hate it, or the I don't know how to do it. And I think that it's if you I think that you can hire people to do it, right? And if it's got a positive ROI, meaning you're going to hire someone to just make phone calls for 70 grand a year, and they're going to make 80 phone calls a day into your targeted companies. If you can run a test and prove that pays back, then you should be doing it, right? So even if you hate it, you don't have to do it. You hire someone to do it, right? Like there's lots of things that I hate. That I hate taxes and accounting, but I have a lawyer, and I have an accountant, and I have a tax person, and so I don't have to do it, right? Like and so this is like a lot of other things. You hire around it if it makes financial sense. And I guess that also speaks to the other thing you just mentioned, was people that complain that it's expensive. It's like, well, of course, sure, it's expensive, but is it? I guess
They're an ROI.
whenever something, yeah, whenever something's expensive, ask yourself, is it worth it though? Like, what's the ROI? So if I drop $70,000 into this new machine I'm creating, am I going to get $200,000 out of it? Well, then it's not expensive. It's a net. It's a gain of 130K.
Yeah,
And I think a lot of people that aren't doing direct outbound marketing, that they would get numbers like that. It's like, yeah, for every person I hired doing this, I'd be paying them 70K, and I'd be getting 200K. So how
for
many should
sure.
I have? How many should I have doing it? Well, until that yield goes down from 200 to 150, then I've got to start rethinking it, right?
Well, I love that you're thinking that way, and I can totally tell that your background is big corporate, because you're thinking like a CEO instead of a business owner. You're thinking strategically. And the only part that I would argue with of what you're saying is it's great to hire someone else to do the outreach, but it's on you to figure out, or to hire someone to help you figure out the strategy, because you cannot rely on, the trades to do the architect doesn't give the contractor the blueprints to draw, right?
Right.
City would never allow you to
you
make a
you've got to be very involved. I mean, you can hire someone who knows how to make calls and has done it before and has generated leads before. There's firms that do this. There's a ton of them.
sure.
But you've got to guide them. You have to figure out the messaging, and frankly, you have to have done it a little bit at least to do that well, I
Exactly.
think.
We were just talking about this. We just had another guest just before you, actually, and we were just talking about how it's so pertinent, especially in sales, to be able to do it yourself a little bit before you're like paying everyone else. And I consider myself the architect of that marketing space, so that like I don't know how to do my taxes. I mean, I could do them, but they wouldn't be very, very good, and I'd be full of mistakes. So that's what I think is I agree with you on. You can pay someone if it makes ROI sense, but they could be calling till the cows come home if they're calling the wrong people and saying the wrong things. So
Yeah, well, and I think taxes are a great example of this, right? Like that is a specific skill. Some people have expertise in this. They went to school for it. They have certifications in it, but you still have to, kind of do it with them, because they don't know. They can't. You have to tell them what your expenses are. You have to work with them a little bit. You have to keep records for them. You have to be, running the accounting software throughout the year appropriately, or else they can't do their jobs. And I think this is similar. If you hire a firm to kind of get you off the ground and figure it out. And there are a bunch of reputable ones. Um, if you hire someone to do that for you, predictable revenue comes to mind. There's a bunch of them like that. You hire someone, maybe it's to get you off the ground and get you to a point where you can do it yourself, but you're gonna have to work closely with those guys, as they figure out who should we be calling for your market, who is the buyer, because you have to point that weapon in the right direction, just like you would have to point your accountant at the right places to get the right write-offs.
Exactly. My gosh. So what parting advice do you have for our viewers around their marketing?
Well, I think SEO and SEM are fantastic. I mean, doing those types of passive marketing things are really important, and we've done a ton of them. That's what we've based our marketing on. We get a lot of leads from it. But I think that I do think that direct marketing, where you're directly going after the best prospects for your company, the most ideal customers, it can you've got to at least experiment with that, because there are tools to figure out where they are, right? Like if you sell, if we decide next week, oh, beer companies are really great for us, beer companies that are at least this big, there are tools to figure out, okay, who are the 1,000 beer companies that are like that and fit that bill, or the 300, or wherever you want to draw the line. I guess however many there are, depending on how you do it. If you're like, okay, beer companies that are more than 50 people, great. How many? You can run a report and get that exact list, and then you can find the decision maker like at those companies. Like, okay, so for me, for example, I go after the VP of sales, the VP of sales operations, the director of sales, or a sales manager. I can find those people on LinkedIn, and then so then I could call them. And so that's a process that we could do. And I think that it's worth everyone really thinking, okay, what if I went after my best prospects, the people that are the most similar to my current customers, that are just the perfect fit? What if I went after them directly? Is that an experiment I can run? And even if I don't want to do it, is it something that I could hire someone else to do, and it would yield great benefit for me, whether it's with email or in mails or phone calls? But throwing a spear rather than casting a web. I think there's a great over-reliance on web casting, and we've definitely fallen prey to that thinking.
Well, that is great insight. Thank you so much. How could people reach you, Steve?
If you just go on LinkedIn and search Steve Benson Badger Maps, that's probably the best place to reach me. I am officially up to date on my in-mails now. So now's the best time to ever. I mean, we're live right now. I'm literally caught up as of last night. I mean, now's the time. If any time in the last 5 years would have been a bad time, now's the right time to get me on LinkedIn. And if you know anyone in field sales or outside sales, send them to badgermapping.com, our website, or they can just search Badger Maps. But that's the place to learn about that. And or you can just reach out to me directly, and I can put you in touch with the right people.
Thank you so much for being a guest.
Thank you. Well, thanks for having me on. It's been fantastic.